Wrestling fans, are you ready? For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, let's get ready to rumble!
And now, please welcome at this time your hosts, Graham GSM Matthews and RJ Marceau. You're listening to the next era of wrestling radio. This is WrestleRant Radio.
Happy Thanksgiving, folks. Welcome back to WrestleRant Radio here today for November 27, 2025. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. As I explained on Tuesday's hashtag AskGSM, which was not live on the YouTube channel on Tuesday, I've been under the weather for the last few days, probably dating back to Full Gear and being there this past weekend. Getting back at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning after being at the post-show press conference, which did not get done until very late. Clearly did not help my cause, but I've also just been very busy for the last few weeks, being at Raw in Madison Square Garden last week, Raw in Boston the week before that, and then Full Gear this past weekend. In addition to everything else going on right now, obviously, like I said, clearly did not help my cause. It was probably inevitable that I was going to, my health was going to crash at some point. Not that I'm on my deathbed or anything like that. I don't even feel that way. I've been far sicker in the past, including Thanksgiving week, probably 3-4 years ago. But anyway, I am on the mend. I'm on the recovery process right now. But probably just to help with the process, I did think it would be best to pre-record the shows this week, not go live on the channel. And there were some scheduling conflicts anyway, just with Mr. Marceau, and I was originally intending to have him on here today. We were going to pre-record on early Wednesday morning. I had something come up last minute, so I'm pre-recording this on Wednesday instead, having it go up Thursday. We never record on Thanksgiving. Why would we? We wouldn't even be live on Thanksgiving anyway, even if I wasn't sick. So it just made the most sense this week to pre-record the show. We'll probably be back to regular scheduled programming next week with both hashtag AskGSM and WrestleRant Radio. So I apologize for the inconvenience. I appreciate you guys tuning in anyway for what is a pretty newsworthy show here today. And it kind of worked out well where I'll save my talking for the second half of the show. And I won't be talking for too long just because my voice is still shot. So I thought it'd be best to take the approach that I will be today with my voice being shot anyway. But it's a newsworthy show because in the first half of today's episode, I'll be airing my interview with WWE SmackDown star Aleister Black. Now, the interview already went up in audio form on the channel on Wednesday, and there is no video version. I do have my video portion of it, but what's the point of that, really? Aleister couldn't do it over video, so we ended up just doing an audio interview over Zoom last week. And as you can tell from the audio quality of the interview, I'm not sick, which is great because this was last week. Thankfully, I did not end up feeling... I didn't end up, not feeling well until after the interview. So the interview actually went great. We went about 30 minutes, had a lot of things to get into. The interview also ran an article form on Bleacher Report on Wednesday. So check that out as well. If you check out the standalone interview here on the channel from Wednesday, if you read the description box or check out the description box or whatever, the link to the article is included there as well as on the homepage for WrestleRant.com. So check that out as well. But yeah, we'll be airing that interview here today for the first half of the show. And then in the second half of the show, I'll be giving my, kind of summarized on-site report from Full Gear this past weekend, and then my predictions for Survivor Series coming up on Saturday night. So that is today's show. I appreciate you guys bearing with me through the kind of change in format for today's episode. Kind of a throwback to the old style of the show with an interview, me talking for a while. Like I said, I regret not having Mr. Marceau on here today, but he'll be back with us next week. Just had some scheduling issues and whatnot, so he'll be back on next week. I look forward to chatting with him about Survivor Series and everything else going on in the world of wrestling. But I do want to mention this before we get going here with the interview. You can check out new episodes of the show every single Thursday on the YouTube channel, as well as on all major podcast platforms, and on WrestleRant.com and WrestleRantRadio.com. Be sure to check this video out on the YouTube version, if you're listening on the audio version in any major podcast platform. Be sure to like the video, subscribe. All that support is greatly appreciated. And as I mentioned, new episodes dropping every single Thursday, Thanksgiving or not. Speaking of Thanksgiving, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge this year that it was 15 years ago, almost exactly to the day, that I created WrestleRant as a website. Really, the brand goes back to like 2011 when I started using WrestleRant as a YouTube channel show name back in 2011. But the website itself, which was originally nextdaywrestling.net, nextdaywrestling.weebly.com, however you know it as, dates back to 15 years ago this month. And I am eternally grateful and thankful for everyone that supported the site, supported me, supported the brand in the last decade and a half to make the site what it is today, make this channel what it is today, make this podcast what it is today. I know we celebrated 12 years of WrestleRant Radio last month, but it was 15 years ago from this month that the website was created. And on that site, you can find all my reviews of Raw, SmackDown, AEW, TNA, Ring of Honor, you name it, I've probably reviewed it. Not so much New Japan, but pretty much everything else that I watch wrestling-wise, I do review for the website. If I consume it, I review it. That's kind of my motto. And it's been going strong now for 15 years, and it's grown exponentially since then. So I want to thank you guys so much for that. I appreciate it. If you want to support the WrestleRant brand and website in any way, you could do so by checking out our t-shirt collection over at ProWrestlingTees.com/WrestleRant. Almost positive they got a Black Friday sale going on right now, so check that out. Might be 10% off, 15% off, whatever it is. Might even be 20 or 25% off. I think it changes every year. But we got 3 t-shirts up, a WrestleRant shirt, a WrestleRant Halloween shirt, and a WrestleRant Christmas shirt. I think it's WrestleRant Radio shirt, and then a Halloween shirt and a Christmas shirt right in time for the holidays. So if you want to show your support in any way, form, or fashion, check that out. And if you let me know that you got one, I'll shout you out here on the show, on social media, what have you. It would mean a lot. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, so let's get going here with my interview with Aleister Black, recorded from last week, hence why I sound a lot better in the interview than I do right here, right now. Talking his return run so far on SmackDown, finally being paired up on television with Zelina Vega, his feud so far with Damian Priest, his time in AEW working for Triple H versus Vince McMahon, his original run with the company, his iconic entrance music, who he almost faced at WrestleMania 41 earlier this year, and so much more. My interview with Aleister Black. Enjoy. Graham Jason Matthews here with Bleach Report and WrestleRant. Today we're talking to SmackDown superstar Aleister Black. Bit busy at the moment with Damian Priest and everything else going on Friday nights alongside his wife, Zelina Vega, as well. Aleister, you've been quite the busy man since being back in WWE, my man. How you doing?
Very good, man. Thank you for asking. How are you yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm doing well as we head into Survivor Series weekend coming up next week as we're speaking right now. And like I said, I'm enjoying what you're doing right now, my man, on SmackDown with Damian Priest. You guys have been kind of at odds for a number of months now, even before that, coming back to WWE. We're coming up on the, 7-month, I think, anniversary, or not anniversary, but the 7-month mark and the time that you've been back in WWE. Just wanted to know, how has it been back being in WWE so far in the 7 months you've been with the company?
It's been absolutely fantastic. I have no complaints. I think in the beginning, obviously, we're kind of like looking as to what fits and how we're going to fit things and, how things kind of play out. Establishing, or more should I say, establishing parts of what once was with some different twists and some evolutionary traits in regards to the initial character. And eventually, obviously, finding my groove a lot more with, the Damian Priest, and now obviously the second or third iteration in regards to that with my wife. It's been really good, man. From just the traveling itself, obviously getting to travel with my wife, and just having the matches in the locker rooms, and the whole experience, man. I really cannot complain at all.
And what a whirlwind it's been. I mean, the time that you've been back in WWE, everything you've been involved in, and even the last couple of years, leaving the company, coming back earlier this year. Did you ever envision a point, not only that you'd be back in WWE, but not only just the character that you're doing right now as well, but like you said, being able to work alongside your wife, when at one point it didn't appear that would be possible when you were elsewhere. At one point she wasn't here, she came back, you were gone. Did you ever envision this would actually happen? This is like a dream come true for you?
Well, so the thing is, I'm a very take it as it goes kind of person. Back in 2020, about a couple months before I left, and we started running the installments of the Dark Father characters. I'm sure you remember the vignettes. There was an actual plan to align my wife with me. initially, and we actually shot some test vignettes at that point. So it was something that was supposed to happen. Obviously, I went elsewhere and did what I did there, came back, and it was a topic of conversation that was immediately had between writers and Triple H. And initially it was, we'll see. Then it was, I don't think that's a good idea. And then it became, you know what? No, I think we should do it. And it was at the right time, I guess. I think they envisioned something for about 3 months before it happened. They started kind of having the conversation again, and some installments were discussed and kind of some back and forth in regards to what it would look like. And then obviously the old vignettes were pulled up and what the perspective and the ideas were there. So we kind of blended that, and I mean, the rest is obviously what you saw. And I am extremely happy that we're getting to do that, especially because also, you know, obviously I know what's to come, and added things that we're going to do in terms of, like, you know, just me with my wife in regards to wrestling and appearances and stuff, and also in-ring stuff. It's been very fun. We've been working on a lot of things because obviously we have our own school. So we've been taking the time in the school to work on some pretty unique offense, I should say.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we'll still time will tell as far as that goes when we see you guys in the ring teaming on SmackDown, hopefully very soon, like you say, and we look forward to that. But just kind of based on that experience alone, with everything you mentioned, kind of coming back, and it's only been a matter of months, like we said, but, you know, not initially getting to run with that idea right from the get-go, which was probably best, coming back with the original music and then kind of being on your own for a little bit, and then slowly, you know, introducing her into the mix. How does that kind of compare from when you were last with the company years ago? Obviously, completely different regime, where, like you mentioned, it was something that you had kind of pitched for and was kind of hoping to do. Frowned upon, didn't get to do it, obviously. Have you noticed, like, any drastic difference as far as the creative process, with as far as you pitching stuff and kind of how they take it? And they're not going to accept everything, obviously, but as far as how you've been able to kind of work with them with what we're seeing right now on SmackDown with you?
Well, first, I wouldn't say that it was frowned upon. It was something that was actually brought up straight away. Like I said, it wasn't at all. It was just that they initially, them being Hunter, thought it was a good idea. Then he was kind of against it, and then and this was something that the writers were talking about. This is not something that I had anything to do with.
Yep.
But eventually was brought forward. And then eventually, when certain things, I think 3-4 months ago, that's where he came back up on the topic and he brought it back up. And that's how the conversation started happening. It was definitely not frowned upon. Coming back, obviously, like you said, the whole structure is completely changed. It's a very different environment. And at the same time, there's a lot of similarities because obviously the business will be the business. It's ran very smooth, in my opinion. But it's ran differently. Obviously, Vince had a very different vision in regards to all of it. But, you know, the business is still ran the way the business is. The structure is still the same. It's just the idea and the executions are often filtered through a different lens. And coming back itself, yeah, I mean, like, you know, in the last 7 months coming in and being immediately thrown in the mix with, you know, some of the biggest baby faces and working main events, and then obviously a week ago working a main event with the current world champion. Like it's a night and day difference from obviously years before that, and also like obviously my first installment. But yeah, like I said, man, it's been great, and the creative process has been great. In the beginning, there was a lot of like throwing out ideas because obviously, and like I said, we have to find some pitch and some ideas, and not everything gets used, absolutely. But I've always had a good relationship with Hunter, whereas I would give an idea, and he would either tweak the idea, not utilize the idea, but then maybe later on, when there was an opportunity for something, he would bring it back up and say, you know what, right there, remember when you said that? We can use that right now. So there's always like an idea jar that we can pull from, and you know, stuff with the masks and stuff like that, and you know, doing it on certain occasions, and when it's an easier way for us to tell the story as to why I wear them or what they should be representing. That process is similar as it was in NXT, perhaps not as embraced.
Yeah.
because in NXT, obviously, there was a lot more wiggle room for certain things, and here it's ran very different. There's a lot more lenses where things have to go through, but it's more than it was in regards to when Vince was there. And I think also because Hunter has this very specific vision, and I think I align a lot with that vision in terms of like what I think he wants from me, but then also what he gives to me is something that I can digest very easily and work with.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it right there too. I feel like there's so many elements of what we're seeing right now, not only with you, but just kind of on WWE TV in general, that kind of gives black and gold vibes from NXT. And I mean, it will never be truly replicated. It was just a kind of span of time that was just so special. And like you said, there's so many differences. The main roster is just so much bigger. It's a much bigger beast than just NXT as a 1 hour show when you were on it years ago, and then later 2 hours as it is now. Are there other elements that you notice and kind of being back? Obviously, the biggest similarity is Triple H, being in charge creatively and all this other sort of stuff. But other elements of in the time that you've been back in WWE that kind of give you like, oh, this is a lot similar to when I was in NXT for those few years, that kind of bring you back to that place. And I guess also some of the people that you're working with too. I mean, I guess you didn't work with Sami Zayn the last time you were here, but he being an NXT black and gold, kind of forefather of that brand from before you got there years ago. And I guess stuff kind of along those lines that reminds you of your time in NXT from a few years ago.
Well, I did work with Sami Zayn.
Oh, really?
The last time I was around, yes. We had a small little feud. The similarities are that I feel that the writers are a lot more involved. And I think that the writers that they have, which is a mix of a lot of the familiar faces and a lot of newer people, I think the team that they have functions incredibly well. It's a lot of really good back and forth. It's a lot of really creative ideas, and the people that are assigned with me, like for instance, I work a lot with Eric Watts, who's like one of my writers, or Colin Clark, who's the individual kind of oversees me, and I bounce a bunch of ideas off of. They have been giving me absolutely fantastic feedback. Whereas in NXT back in the day, we would work a lot with the writers, of course, in a similar setting. I feel that has kind of been brought over from NXT, and it's actually harped up, where I feel that they are much more part of the team now than they were when I was there the first time. And of course, we worked with writers back then, but there's just something about the involvement and the freedom that we have with the writers in terms of promos, in terms of how we want to say things, that was very prevalent in NXT, that we are able to do now here as well. And that makes the product, in my opinion, a hell of a lot better when you let the performers or the wrestlers or the entertainers, whatever you will, really dive into what their characters want to say.
Mm-hmm. And I think another big similarity, too, that we've seen from NXT to kind of what we're seeing now compared to the previous regime in WWE is primarily with the PLEs and the pay-per-views, as far as how they're formatted. Now, like with WrestleMania back in the day, now it's 2 days, which is, I think, a big benefit to a lot of the talent and the fans as well. But like at one point in time with the pay-per-views, there were you've been on a number of them on both regimes, but especially when you were here the last time, 8-match pay-per-views. Over in AEW, they have 12-match pay-per-views. But nowadays, it's like 5-6 matches with the newer PLEs. And I think there's obviously pros and cons to both approaches. But it reminds me a lot of NXT, because NXT would have the quarterly takeovers, but they would only be 4 or 5 matches. Now, granted, it's a smaller roster at that point, but I feel like it kind of makes it fight harder for that real estate, I guess, in like a good way, as far as like you really not only just, everyone deserves the spot, but like earning that spot and making sure your stuff stands out. Like, so I guess from that standpoint, just kind of getting your thoughts on, do you feel like there's a real, when you do end up on a PLE, like we get the big blow off with Damian Priest on whatever show it might be, and there might be less PLEs now compared to what there used to be, fighting harder for that real estate and kind of really making it mean something, and as opposed to just ending up on a PLE and getting 2 minutes and not really having a chance to stand out, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think having less matches on PLAs, especially because they're a lot more frequent, makes a lot more sense. Even back when I worked in Japan a lot, that was kind of like the given, 5-6 matches a night, because it keeps everything a lot more special.
Sure.
The second you go above, in my personal opinion, above the level of 7 or 8 matches, you're going to wear out the crowd a lot. And, we live in an age where attention spans are very limited. Everything is a lot of gratification. So the longer you let something go for the sake of having people on the card, because you want to put people on the card, for say, that might be at the detriment of, the product or the perceived experience by fans.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, because there will always be people that are absolutely, enjoying it from start to finish. But I think that I can say that having match cards that are excessively big will eventually work in the detriment of the, like I said, perceived experience itself.
Yeah.
I think that WWE made a right call with like limiting the matches a little bit, because again, like I said, it makes it easier to digest, gives you more time to divide your attention on the things that you want to pay attention to in terms of like storytelling and match quality. Even back then, like, yeah, there were moments where there were nine matches on a card, for instance, and yeah, some people would get 3 minutes because time is short and we only have X amount of spots and stuff like that. Where, yeah, I mean, you can make a case that it'd be harder to be on a PLE, but at the same time, the frequency of the PLEs has also increased. So I would say it evens itself out a little bit, but I definitely think that is, in my personal opinion, always been the way forward, where less is more. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Do you have a preference between being a babyface or a heel? Obviously, you've been a bad guy now for a few months, and we've seen it before from your original run in the company, your time elsewhere on the independent scene. So it's not something that's exactly new to you. You're obviously very familiar to the role, but as a good guy too, coming back to the company, getting great reactions, and it kind of fits with that character. I feel like you excel in both areas. But for you personally, do you have a preference?
I think I enjoy being a heel much more, which is obviously standard answer. That's what most people, I think, would say. I enjoy being a babyface, especially like obviously the first run in NXT, because it was a different type of babyface. It wasn't the here I am, guys, cheer for me kind of babyface. It was a much more energy-driven, stoic babyface in regards to the actions that he would have. And obviously, this iteration is a lot more verbally driven, where there is a certain suicidalness to this character, where he self-destructs a lot more because he has a lot more of a cynical look at what society is. I would say that my characters often have been a bit of a, not even a bit of, but like they're a bit of a mirror of society in regards to how I personally view society is, and how I a lot of times see our society for what it is, or like how the human race interacts or acts. And I think I always have done a pretty decent job of walking on the energy fields of that. And I enjoy that thoroughly because it's something that I understand. And it's a long-term storytelling, because obviously society is an ever-changing thing, and the way that people perceive things is an ever-changing thing. But there's always this red threading, and that's why, like I said, there's this self-destructiveness to this character, where I think you can transcend the idea of winning and losing. Where even back in AEW, where the character was much more about, well, it's not just about winning or losing because I made you do X, Y, and Z, and I proved to you that I could corrupt you. I proved to you that I could make you do all these things. And I'm happy that I was able to grab a big element of that and implement that into this one and stick a whole new layer to it. A layer that we're obviously still kind of like cementing out and fleshing out, because it's an ever-changing work in progress. So I enjoy that process a lot, especially because it gives me stuff to digest. It gives me stuff to work with. It gives me stuff to work to. And, whenever I have done a promo or a match, or my opponent has said X, Y, or Z, it allows me to kind of digest that through that filter and then say, what would my rebuttal be, other than acting out of an emotional response, instead of like getting mad or angry that someone would call me a coward, for instance. Like for me, it would be much more is like, okay, why is he calling you a coward? And then like kind of looping around it and saying, well, you're calling me a coward because you're actually worried. And you think that calling me a coward is what's going to make me feel mentally inferior, or that there is some truth to what you're saying, but what I hear is your projections. And that's kind of like, the characters are able to see beyond the words and not respond emotionally, but respond back to what why the opposite character is saying that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to what we're seeing right now with your character, and it has been for a while. Like, this isn't just something new with what you've been saying on SmackDown and your vignettes and stuff. But I just think it's pretty incredible that you took something so small from 5 years ago when you were attacked on Raw by Seth Rollins with the whole eye thing. And then that was the evolution for your character at that point. and then you took that to AEW and used that for a while, and now even coming back with that with the different color eye contact and everything else. I mean, I would have to imagine that's something that you, I mean, obviously this is cross promotional, so it's not just, you know, you being told to do that or whatever. Can you kind of give me some insight on your mindset behind that whole thing and how it's kind of carried you to where you are now? And you just talked about that awesome deep dive process with your character and how that one little small thing from that stupid match that Rollins and Ray had from 2020 during COVID, you turned that something into so much bigger that we're seeing now. And it's been pretty cool to see across multiple companies.
It's just something that I felt gave me a layer to communicate from, and it gave me a reason to have a cynical layer to this character. I've always been a big fan of James Bond villains.
Okay.
And James Bond villains always have something supernatural without being supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Jaws, he had like metal teeth. You look at Blofeld, he had that weird eye and scar on his eye. And it gave them something unique, something to be feared of, you know, the man with a golden gun. It's almost like a supernatural-esque narrative, while the reality is there's nothing supernatural about it, and they're much more like psychological villains. And I have always enjoyed that process where there is a means to an end. And I felt that when we did the eye thing, it gave me a lot to talk about, but it gave me a reason to kind of revert back to, because a lot of that had to do with the accountability and not wanting to take the accountability for the character and blaming everybody else but himself. But the reality is he's the one who decided to help, Dominic Mysterio at the time and Ray, and, pay dearly for it with his eyesight. And I felt that it was such a significant thing for the character that I almost felt that it would be cheating myself if I didn't make it an actual part of the character. Now, there's a part of me that also likes asymmetrical designs. I've always been fascinated by something that's asymmetrical. And there's a weird balance in asymmetrical things. Mm-hmm. If obviously that sounds like a bit of a counter argument, but there's something about it that I like, and it just speaks to me in a way that I can communicate my character and understand my character a lot better. It's given me a motivation and a reason beyond just the aesthetic.
No, it makes sense. And it's, again, something that's not only given you great character evolution in the last 5 years. Again, this is not something that happened a year ago, like the last 5 years, but it also just looks cool too, like the whole asymmetrical aspect of it, as you mentioned. Yeah. And being back in WWE, when you first came back, when the rumors were kind of swirling that you were going to be back earlier this year and whatnot, the first question in everyone's mind is, will he come back with the old music? Obviously, the answer was yes. We heard it hit on the post-WrestleMania SmackDown. Got a great reaction. It's a bit different, but I think it obviously legally has to be. There's a whole story behind that. But for you coming back, was that part, especially as a babyface initially, was that something that you were like, I mean, obviously you're going to just do whatever works for the company, whatever's best. But like, was that something that you were kind of hoping for? Like, I feel like people would react best if we kind of brought back the original music. Can you kind of bring me behind the process and the evolution of getting that song back, which was so synonymous with your character during your original run?
I mean, it was the only thing that would make sense.
Yep.
Like, that's the only thing for the most part that, like, people can cling on to. And over the years, the amount of people that, would reference my music, because like the package was obviously, the rising up out of nowhere, the music, the lights, the jackets, the aesthetic, the stoicness, and just the nature of the character in that regard. They were one package. So if you would take one element out from that package, you would tarnish the package, and you would tarnish the memory or level of expectation that fans would have. So we didn't want to take anything away from it. And even before any conversations were had, what directions it would take, the conversation immediately went like, we're going to do this and this, and those both included the coming out of nowhere, rising up, and the music. That was obviously the first thing that were right back on the table.
They had to be. I mean, I just feel like, especially with the, presentation that we saw from you in NXT,
Yeah.
coming to the main roster. I mean, even on the main roster, we didn't really get to see all of it. You had the song there for a while, but was it not long into your main roster run the first time they kind of added, this was notoriously a Vince thing, maybe you can confirm this, that the creaking of the board or whatever, which wasn't awful, but it's like the small things that make the biggest differences.
That was definitely a Vince thing.
Yeah.
I think Vince thought that the character was a vampire, and he felt like, like old school Nosferatu, rising up, 1920s Count Orlok type.
Yep.
So he felt that he heard a creak, and that's why he wanted to have the creak there. I didn't mind it as much, but I feel like for fans, it was a little bit of a discontinuation of
Sure.
what they, love and see. And, change is always difficult for a lot of people to accept. And this wasn't the biggest change, but I do feel that I understand where fans were coming from, because I don't personally think that it added a lot. It also kind of like negated what I thought of what the character was. So, it's a different translation, but at the same time, like, I could translate it and it was fine.
Yeah.
It didn't make me a very different character just because there was a creak, but yeah, that's something that he wanted to do. And, that was fine. It didn't change my mind on a lot of things, but it was definitely his thought process in that regard.
Yeah, no, kind of putting a spin on it, which we had seen with so many people other at that point, so it wasn't entirely surprising. But and coming back to the company, you came back on the post WrestleMania SmackDown, which is a pretty prime show to come back on. I mean, it wasn't the post WrestleMania crowd, but it was still a pretty great crowd. And do you remember the city that it was in that night that you came back?
Oh boy, gosh, that's a dime a dozen. Nowadays, even with my wife, when we go to shop, and this has been a thing with me for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
I just show up at the airport and I pull my boarding pass out. And at that point, like, oh, you're going to so-and-so? I said, yeah, I guess that's what we're doing. No, I do not remember what city we were in.
Yeah.
I know that probably sounds bad, but it's just because of all the travel and
no, I get it. Yeah.
week-to-week basis of just like getting in and out. At one point, you kind of lose track of the amount of cities that you've seen.
No, I can imagine. They all kind of blend together. But nonetheless, it was a good crowd that night because they obviously remembered and they gave you a great reaction. Was there ever I guess on your end, as far as what like the process of coming back, like that was a pretty great show to come back on, because that's kind of like when the deck is kind of reset, so to speak, in WWE right after WrestleMania, making it more of a surprise. I mean, the last time you had left and appeared in AEW, that you've talked about that whole process before, kind of like popping up in nowhere and everyone thinking you had 90-day non-compete. It was actually 30 days, one of the best debuts in any company in the last 5 years. Coming back to WWE, this was still pretty great. You got the vignette treatment. It wasn't confirmed it was you. It's not like the name popped up on the screen, but it was still pretty special when you popped up. Was there ever any idea, as far as making it more of like, because people were thinking, oh, you'll be in the Rumble, like, but I don't think you were free yet. So making it more of a surprise than what we got the night after WrestleMania, or was that always the plan?
So they were toying with a bunch of ideas. I know at one point there was this conversation about like, oh, maybe he's coming back to wrestle Randy Orton at Mania. Mm-hmm. And that was an actual thing that was discussed. But you also have to understand that wasn't a isolated thing as to like, oh, maybe it could be this. And then obviously all the focus went on that. It's more like, they'll check a list of names and they'll be like, oh, maybe it's this person. Oh, maybe it's this person. Hey, maybe, why don't we get so-and-so?
Yeah.
And, it was counter-argued quickly because they were like, well, we don't want him to lose coming back at WrestleMania. That doesn't make any sense. So, that was just a one end like, oh, maybe we can do that. You know what? No, because, so-and-so. And at that point, they kind of already made the decision to bring me back. By the way, was it Texas? It was Texas, because it's going to bug me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, for
come back in Texas?
Oh, the WrestleMania.
Texas, right?
I think. Let me check. I'll look it up. I'm pretty sure it was in Texas.
It's going to bug the hell out of me.
I'll look it up while you're talking. Let me see.
Okay. Yeah. So they had decided on it. Then the Randy Orton thing came up. Then they were very quick to go like, no, let's keep it there.
Yep.
They felt that they wanted to give it the right attention. They wanted it to be like, specifically about me, which I'm very grateful for. And, what happened, and I really enjoyed it. It was a great night. It's the same night that my wife obviously won her first singles title. Mm-hmm. Very unique few days, even the leading up after that. Like, obviously, it was a very good memory, very, very special, very unique.
For sure. And I just checked. It was indeed Texas. It was in Fort Worth specifically.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah, no, very good crowd that night. I don't think it's been done very often where we've seen a match, as we wind down here in the next couple minutes, that we've seen a match in AEW that has then been done in WWE. I know we've seen matches in WWE that were done there, but
Yeah,
like you and Cody Rhodes, I obviously wasn't done during WWE the first time, he wasn't here, but we
yeah.
just saw that on SmackDown recently. I thought it was very cool. You guys got to run it back. Obviously, you can't really go too much into the history of elsewhere. It's a whole thing. But, getting to run it back on SmackDown to the main event, like you mentioned earlier, just talk about that experience. And I just feel like it'd be cool to kind of see that revisited as a formal feud down the road, whether it be with Cody from, AEW or the Rollins thing, like you said from
Yeah.
earlier, when he kind of caused the eye injury or blaming Rey Mysterio. I
Yeah.
feel like there's so many possibilities for you going forward.
There is endless possibilities, and the roster is so stacked nowadays. There's so much new talent there, and so much great new talent. Like, the NXT talent pool is absolutely filled with very young, exciting wrestlers to keep an eye on, and hopefully that I get to work with. I'm very blessed to be in the stage of my career where I feel like I'm more seasoned and better than I've ever been. I physically look better, feel better than I've ever done. And being able to work these incredible people, and obviously, Cody Rhodes. There's a reason why he's the world champion. I don't think other than like John Cena, I've seen anybody work as hard as that he does. He's always on the road. He's always busy. He's always promoting. He's always representing the company. He's someone that I look up to very, very much so. So when I got the chance to wrestle him in a quick little, a little taster is what I would call it, and that's also kind of what the prerogative was. It was, just give him something that makes people excited for what could possibly happen down the line, which I think we did. It was a lot of fun, and it's always a good day when I get to wrestle Cody, because he's absolutely one of the easiest people to work with. He's super professional, has a great mind for where to place things, how to place things, but also how to let every opponent be unique and let them shine in their respected abilities. And that's something that, especially with Cody, that I'm always grateful for. And moving down the line, I absolutely hope that we get to, replay the whole thing with myself and Seth, because there is obviously a lot of storytelling there. And even the fact that we got to do this little nudge a while ago when I wrestled LA Knight, we got to do this little nudge of me and Seth, and hearing the crowd, getting up for it. That's just, that's great. That's a validation as to what we did, as small as it was at the time, because it was obviously during the COVID era. It still resonated with a lot of people. Yeah. And that's always very rewarding. And I think that's the fun part in professional wrestling, is that you can always go back to something if the story is told properly, and it makes people excited for things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, man, I know you know this, but wrestling fans remember. They remember even the smallest bit of things.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you get that all the time, but I look forward to that in the future. Last question for you, though. Can you tell me what music you're listening to right now and what's inspiring you, as far as like maybe what your current character is and just what you're listening to in general?
I think everybody always knows that I'm a big black metal and hardcore guy, metal, etc. A band that's always like inspired me is a band called Garea. They actually do something aesthetically that I am having. I had some stuff made that I have not debuted yet. That's something that they do that not only in the music, but also, like I said, the aesthetic versions of things that they represent and things that they do made me think a lot. And for instance, the sigil that I'm using right now on the drawing and on my logos. And of course, I know what sigils were before this band, but they had a specific way of like using these sigils, and that made me think a lot. I think that's an important thing for me always with music. It has to inspire me. Bands like Terror, in terms of like their way of thinking, their lyrics, what they represent, what they stand for, what the message is. Those are things that always kind of keep me very motivated and allow me to have verbiage and allow me to use the meanings of certain song lyrics to write promos in regards to, a big one has always been like retain their aesthetics and, visuals. Gridiron is another one that I really, really, really love. the list of music, and it's funny because I did an interview yesterday with a gentleman named Cody Tucker, and he asked me about my Mount Rushmore of music, and I'm like, oh God, there's like literally hundreds of bands that I listen to, and all of them have their own unique, special place with me as to how they inspire me, whether that is musically only or like aesthetically in combination with the music. It's a never-ending process for me, and I think when the time comes to hang up my kick pads, in this case, not my boots, it would be very difficult for me to separate the music from the inspiration.
Awesome.
As to how much it means to me to listen to music in that regard.
Yeah, no, some good stuff there, man. Hopefully that's no time soon. Hopefully we can continue enjoying you on SmackDown for the foreseeable future as part of this ongoing rivalry with Damian Priest that we've been digging since you've been back in WWE. Hey, listen, man, I appreciate the time. When you came back to WWE earlier this year, my girlfriend and I are both massive fans. But when she specifically loves the music, so when she heard that, she lost her shit and was probably, as they say, marking out over that for quite a while. So we appreciate you being back, and we love what you're doing right now with Zelina.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, dude. Take care. We'll talk down the road.
Take care.
Big thanks to Aleister Black for the time. As I mentioned earlier, the full interview is available right now as its own video on the YouTube channel from Wednesday, so check that out, as well as the written version of the interview for all the highlights from our chat over at Bleacher Report as of Wednesday as well. So, great time chatting with Aleister. I actually only chatted with him for an interview. Not really an interview, but only one other time. Over SummerSlam weekend earlier this year. I asked them one question. It went up as a short here on the channel at the time, but I hadn't really done ever a formal interview with Aleister, and he's been one of my favorites dating back to his NXT days. So that was a lot of fun. I appreciate his time, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the interview as well. So here in the latter half of the show, as we wind down here, won't spend too much time. I want to give my overall thoughts at being at Full Gear this past weekend. I thought overall it was a good show. It was a very typical, entertaining event from AEW. No surprise there. Build wasn't the greatest, card on paper even wasn't the greatest, but it did turn out to be a very newsworthy event with multiple new champions being crowned. So I won't give like my in-depth thoughts in every single match from the show, but I will give my quick Spark Notes version of being there live at the Prudential Center in Newark. And honestly, I completely forgot how nice the Prudential Center actually is. The surrounding area is exactly what you would expect out of New Jersey. But the Prudential Center itself, I think I'd only ever been there for one other show. I know WWE ran Newark earlier this year for SummerSlam. I was there for that. But not to the Prudential Center. I only went to both nights of SummerSlam and MetLife. So I didn't go to SmackDown that Friday in the Prudential Center. The only other time, aside from Full Gear, that I had been in that building was almost a decade ago, actually, for Extreme Rules in 2016 with myself and Mr. Marceau and his missus. And we had a great time, and I kind of forgot how great the arena is. On the inside, it's really nice, seems brand new. Seats are nice. It's a nice, intimate atmosphere, perfect for Full Gear, too. This is actually not the first time they've run that arena for that exact show. They were actually just there last year, and they were also there for the 2022 installment. That was when MJF beat Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship. I think every time they've run that arena, actually, that's not true. I was going to say when they ran the arena last year, they also crowned a new champion. I'm mistaking that with when I was at World's End 2 years ago in Long Island, in the Nassau Coliseum or whatever they're calling it now. That was the last major AEW show I attended. I was at a Collision last year in Springfield, Mass., which was fine, but the last AEW pay-per-view I was in attendance for was that World's End show back in 2023. And at the end of that show, Samoa Joe walked out, the new AEW World Champion. And funnily enough, the exact same thing happened on this show. Samoa Joe's only 2 world title reigns in AEW both came at shows that I was in attendance for, which is kind of crazy. And neither time did I expect it. So that was a pleasant surprise. But going back to the pre-show here, starting from the beginning and working our way to the main event, I missed the first match in the show. I went back and watched it after the fact. It was perfectly fine. Really nothing out of the ordinary. That was Bang Bang Gang's Austin Gunn and Juice Robinson beating Bowens and Caster, Big Bill and Brian Keith, and the Outrunners in a 4-way tag team match for $200,000. We already had a money match earlier, or rather later on in the show, with the Bucks and Alexander, Omega, Jurassic Express. After already having a money match with the Bucks and Jurassic Express on the last pay-per-view, that being WrestleDream a month ago, we got another one on this show. Actually, we got 2 on this show. One with those guys and then one with these guys. A total waste of time, not really a match I was regretting missing. seeing in person. But I did get there just in time for Boom and Doom, Big Boom AJ and QT Marshall, Big Boom AJ of the Costco guys, of course, taking on and beating RPG Vice in tag team action, which was actually a fun match. I mean, it was a lot like the other matches that AJ's had so far at Revolution and Full Gear last year, respectively. I don't know what their plans for him are, aside from just wrestling in the occasional tag team match and teaming with either QT Marshall or facing Marshall or whatever, which is who he faced in last year's show. He's got his limitations, of course, but he does have pro wrestling experience, and you could tell from his matches. The crowd was into it. A lot of shenanigans at ringside with the rest of our, with Don Callis family and Paul White, who made his return to commentary on the show randomly, and the fucking Rizzler was there at ringside, Big Justice, the whole Costco-verse getting involved in this matchup. It was fun for what it was, and easily, to me, the best thing on the pre-show that was exclusive to the pre-show. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. Eddie Kingston and Hook beat the Workhorsemen in a quick tag team match, a complete waste of time. I don't really know why this happened. It was less than 2 minutes. They picked up a quick win. And it wasn't even as if, let's give them a win to further establish them as the threat in the tag team division. Fucking Hook turned heel at the end of the show, so they're not even a team anymore anyway, unless Kingston goes heel too, which I'm not expecting, nor do I think he should. I'm not really sure what purpose this was supposed to serve. The fourth match in the pre-show, the tailgate brawl as they called it, ended up bleeding into the actual show, where most of the match actually happened. So that's why I said earlier, exclusive to the pre-show, because this wasn't, exactly exclusive to the pre-show. It was El Sky Team Mystico, Mascara Dorada, and Neon, beating the Don Callis families Okada, Takeshita, and Hechicero to retain the CMLL World Trios Championships, in a very fun match. It ended exactly as you would expect, with dissension between Okada and Takeshita. El Sky Team going over, Mystico, I believe, picking up the win for his team to retain the titles. And it was later announced that Okada, Takeshita, and Kyle Fletcher will all be in the 2025 Continental Classic. Now, they did reveal the competitors for the Continental Classic later on in the week. I'm recording this before Dynamite, but they did kick off the 2025 Continental Classic, as they had the last 2 years, on Wednesday's Dynamite, the pre-Thanksgiving episode. So the fields are looking stacked, though. I don't have them right here in front of me, but I know it was those three guys. Moxley's in it, Roderick Strong, a lot of other notable names from the mid-card as well. I think Kevin Knight, both members of Jet Speed, Kevin Knight, Speedball Mike Bailey, among others as well. So it should be a great tournament. I'm actually really looking forward to it. I fully expect Takeshita to go over and for us to get Takeshita and Okada for the AEW Continental Championship in the finals of this thing next month at World's End. But on paper, the matches look incredible, and I'm looking forward to the matches coming up in the weeks to come. I think Darby Allin's also in it, but I think Takeshita is the only logical option to win the entire thing. So anyway, those were the pre-show matches, or the matches that bled over into the main card as well. The first match on the actual card was Pac taking on Darby Allin. Very good match. The whole idea was that Pac lost. Obviously, his team lost. The Death Riders did. In Blood and Guts a few weeks ago, he wanted to prove to Darby Allin that he could beat him in a straightforward wrestling match. Now, he did cheat to win by using a weapon, but that was the whole point, I believe. The match itself was good. Darby Allin taking the usual stupid risks. What else is new? Probably not even in the top 30 dumbest things I've seen that guy do on AEW television. But the stuff that he did in this match. But still a good match. Pac did end up winning, which surprised me, because Darby Allin's team did go over in Blood and Guts. You would think he would keep winning against the Death Riders, because this feud really should be over. The feud might continue. I'm not sure if it will or won't. I don't really know. But Pac going over does give me hope, unless we saw something happen on Wednesday's Dynamite, which I'm pretty sure did not happen, but that I could foresee it happening on tonight's show from when I record this. Pac kicking out Moxley out of the Death Riders and taking his spot as the leader of the group. I don't think that's happening right now. I think it should. Him beating Allin and then Moxley later in the show losing to Kyle O'Reilly should allow that to happen. I just don't know if they're going to go in that direction, but they definitely should. Because the group sucks, and any sort of change would be nice. As far as removing a member or changing leadership, I would just disband the entire group, personally. But if you're going to keep them around, then getting rid of Moxley and putting Pac in his place, totally fine by me. We had another 4-way tag team match on this show, this time with the women. It was the Timeless Love Bombs taking on and beating Babes of Wrath, Sisters of Sin, and the team of Megan Bayne and Marina Shafir. So this was a random match, but these are the 4 remaining teams in the AEW Women's World Tag Team Championship tournament, and by virtue of their victory, the Timeless Love Bombs can choose the stipulation for their semifinal match in the tournament against Bayne and Shafir, and this made sense after Bayne and Shafir were the ones who won Blood and Guts for their team a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, whatever, by pinning, I think it was Shirakawa, and attacking her. Storm gave up because they were attacking Shirakawa, so it all goes back to that. They furthered the story well here, and I thought it was a fun 4-way for what it was. FTR and Brodido had my favorite match of the entire show, and you can argue there were too many near falls, and honestly, I feel that way about a lot of the matches in AEW. I didn't feel that way about this. It wasn't as if like they did some crazy shit, and then they kicked out, and then they ended on a flat note. They ended on a pretty good note where Brodido gave FTR everything they had. It even kicked out of a bunch of stuff too. But in the end, FTR just was relentless, laying in their shit, and in the end walked away the new AEW World Tag Team Champions for, I believe, the 3rd time in their AEW careers. An awesome, awesome match, and I think a case absolutely has to be made, if it's not already obvious, for FTR being the Tag Team of the Year in professional wrestling. There's been a lot of good teams this year. Even in AEW, Brodido's had a great year, but FTR on the whole have been keeping busy in matches with, they started out working with Paragon earlier this year, had a whole series of matches with them on Collision, ended up feuding with the Outrunners, Jet Speed, Edge and Christian, Adam Copeland and Christian Cage, of course, back at All Out a few months ago, and they're clearly going to rekindle that rivalry when Copeland's ready to return. Now that FTR are the Tag Team Champions, we are clearly getting Copeland and Christian as the next AEW World Tag Team Champions, which is totally fine by me. But this match was awesome. Really, really enjoyed it. The 12-man Casino Gauntlet match for the AEW National Championship, the inaugural AEW National Championship. I say 12-man because that's what it ended up being. But this could have gone more, but I like the Casino Gauntlet matches, and this was a fun time to watch in person, and I've enjoyed all the other installments we've had so far. I wish they wouldn't, do this gimmick so often where it doesn't feel as special as it should. I think they've done like 7 of them this year. They did a men and a women's one earlier on in the year, and they did 2 in the same night, I think, at the All In show over the summer. I think they did another one right before Double or Nothing. They've definitely done a lot of them this year. And it's a great gimmick. I just wouldn't run it into the ground to the point where it's not special. The time, stamps or the time intervals, rather, of each entrant is so inconsistent, it's ridiculous. I mean, someone will come out after 30. I mean, I guess it's like the fucking Royal Rumble, but it's even more pronounced in a match like this where someone would come out after 30 seconds. It might be another 3 minutes before someone comes out. And at the end, no one came out. Like, they ran out of people, and I thought the whole gimmick was that it would keep going and going and going until there was a winner. But at the end there, no one came out for like, maybe not 5 minutes, but it was a good few minutes before Ricochet finally won and no one came out. So I don't know if it was meant to be 12 men or if it was, they just wanted you to think that someone was going to come out in 5 seconds before Ricochet won the title. I don't know. Ricochet winning wasn't really all that much of a surprise. I said it on last week's show that him being squashed by Bobby Lashley on Dynamite last week was kind of a telltale sign that he was probably winning. And I hate that too. I think Ricochet winning is cool, but do you really need to have him get squashed by Bobby Lashley in a matter of minutes to make it more of a surprise that he might win when he wins? I thought that was stupid. Like, don't book... Ricochet's had an overall very good run so far in AEW. Don't be booking him like he was in WWE at certain points where he's just a loser. I wasn't a fan of that, but the overall match was fun. And then after that, this is kind of where the show went off the rails for me. Some good matches, but a lot of excessive shit as well. That being Kyle O'Reilly and Jon Moxley, a no-holds-barred match. What issue do these two have to necessitate a no-holds-barred match? They were just involved in Blood and Guts a fucking week and a half before this, bleeding, and Kyle O'Reilly already tapped out Moxley. Moxley said, you can't do that one-on-one. I win and lose all the time, but, that win didn't matter, which was kind of a dumb thing to say. And then he tapped out here, too, did Moxley. As he should have. Absolutely the right outcome. But it's not as if, they've had this blood feud. O'Reilly's been trying to prove himself to Moxley, and hopefully they capitalize on this for O'Reilly. He's not even in the Continental Classic, which is kind of fucking weird. They said he was injured and he won't be able to compete, but I imagine that's a storyline thing. Still kind of dumb that he's not in it. But anyway, maybe they don't want him taking losses or whatever. But regardless, with this match, it was a good match, but like the fucking screwdriver shit, they just go overboard in matches where it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't need it. It's a basic mid-card feud. And honestly, I feel the same way about Briscoe and Kyle Fletcher. The biggest issue they had with each other was that they are both 3 wins apiece. Or they coming, this was match 6. I think Fletcher won 3 out of the 2. Briscoe won this one. So now they're 3-3. But that was the biggest issue they had with each other. Carmelo Hayes and Andrade were 3-3 last year. And they had a great feud, a great series of matches. Yeah, maybe you could say one of those matches could have been a street fight. But they weren't doing this shit to each other that these two were doing to each other here. I mean, it was just completely ridiculous. And again, Briscoe winning the TNT Championship, great moment. They do have some history as opponents and exchanging wins. But it didn't really necessitate a lot of the gross shit that we saw in this match. And it's not even as if, I mean, some of that stuff is not for me. But I can deal with it, or I get it, or I understand it in situations where it makes sense. But they did this in at least 3 matches on this fucking show. Again, to the point where it just doesn't even matter. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't carry any weight. Because we see it so often, including at a show called Blood and Fucking Guts a week and a half earlier. So I wasn't a fan of that. The overall match I didn't really love. It was a good match, but it went overboard in the second half. No surprise given that it's AEW and that, it's a no DQ match, whatever. But Briscoe winning the TNT Championship was the right outcome. A great moment, and I thought his post-show comments at the press conference were also really nice as well. So good stuff there. Josh Alexander and the Young Bucks beating Kenny Omega and Jurassic Express in a match for $1 million. The match was fun, but it went too long. The crowd by this point was exhausted. I mean, also to put 2 basically no DQ matches back-to-back was pretty fucking stupid. And then you're just left with a regular 6-man tag team match with money on the line where no one really cares who wins. The real angle here, the real focus, was on what happened afterward with the Bucks and Kenny Omega reuniting. It was a nice moment. I mean, I feel like they've been telling that story for a while now, so it made sense to pull the trigger on it here. I don't know if this means Kenny Omega and the Bucks are going to re-enter the Trios division or what. I would hope not. I mean, I don't really want the Bucks going back after the tag titles or whatever, but with Omega at this point in his career, maybe he would prefer to be in 6-man tag team action, but I'd much rather prefer to see him in singles matches, especially since we don't know how much longer he intends to wrestle for, so I'd prefer that we see him in as many singles matches as we can while we can, instead of resorting to 6-man stuff that he could save for later on when there really isn't creatively anything else for him to do. Chris Statlander on the show beating Mercedes Mone to retain the AEW Women's World Championship, an outcome that I was pleasantly surprised by. I think the last 3 matches on the show I got wrong. There were a few other matches I got wrong as well, but these 3 matches I got wrong definitely. I think I picked Omega and Jurassic Express last week. I picked Monet, and then I picked Adam Page to retain. And I was wrong with all 3 matches. But Chris Statlander did win. That was definitely the right outcome. And like I said a few weeks ago, it kind of just feels like a lose-lose because the story is that Mercedes cannot win the big one. It's a nice story to tell, and she will obviously at some point win the AEW Women's World Championship. But it just makes her look inferior when she can win every other, and honestly makes the belts that she holds look inferior too. That she can win all these other mid-card belts, a lot of which mean nothing. She can win all of these other titles, but she can't win the one championship that actually matters. Not that the TBS championship doesn't matter, but that's the only match where she fails every time, where she's fallen twice. She's fallen short twice now of winning the AEW Women's World Championship when that title has been on the line. So, again, at some point she will win that main title, and it's a nice story to tell. I would not tell that story while she is the TBS champion. I think that's what's lost on people, is that, to me, it just makes the TBS championship look like a fucking prop. That she's like, oh yeah, I can hold this for 500 days, but I can't win an actual championship. That matters way more than this one. Lose the TBS championship and then focus your sights on the world title. Maybe that's the point of the story where she's too busy and spreading herself too thin with all these other pointless indie championships to the point where she can't win the main title. But again, okay, if that's the case, but she is still the TBS champion. She holds 13 other belts and a TBS championship, but she can't win the main title. So again, to me, it feels like a lose-lose, but of either outcome, Statlander winning made more sense. The match was good. Crowd was dead as fuck, though. It was just almost midnight. It was almost midnight at this point in the show by the time this match was over. And I feel bad for the women because they went out there and had a good, well-wrestled match, but it was hard to care. It felt like the crowd only really reacted towards the finish. And they came alive towards the end a little bit, but it was really only the finish that they came alive for, because the rest of the match they were just waiting for it to be over because they knew this was not the main event and we still had one more match to go. These shows are just too fucking long. I asked Tony Khan the same thing when I was at the post-show press conference, and he kind of danced around it by saying, oh, it's a Saturday, so it makes more sense than a Sunday. No, it fucking doesn't. When your shows are ending at almost 12:30 in the morning on the East Coast, it's one thing when you start them at 8 on the East Coast, but they're being filmed on the West Coast. So that means that like they're starting at 5 and ending at like 9 or 10 maybe. Still a long show, but it makes more sense. And it just sucks for those that are watching here on the East Coast. Okay, whatever. But when you're actually doing the show on the East Coast and you're starting it at 8, or really 7, because it's really just a 5.5 hour show is basically what it is. They're running WrestleMania times with this shit. It's fucking ridiculous. To the point where the crowd is completely dead during these matches. The main event did not feel like a big deal at all. Between Samoa Joe and Adam Page. Inside of a steel cage for the AEW World Championship because of the dead atmosphere. The crowd did not give a shit. Because it was well past fucking midnight when the match finally started. And I feel bad because I was looking forward to the match. I like Page. I like Joe. They've had a good feud. Joe bleeding a gusher in the first 5 minutes did not mean shit. It was a nice visual when he won the belt at the end and he was holding the championship over his shoulder, and then Swerve came back to a nice reaction, which was a nice way to close the show, and Joe spitting out blood in the fucking ring. That was a cool visual. But bleeding a gusher in the first 5 minutes after we already saw what we did with Briscoe and Fletcher and O'Reilly and Moxley did not mean anything. The crowd didn't react. They didn't give a fuck. They were just checking their watches to see when the show would be over. I don't care if the show's on a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Friday, Wednesday. It doesn't matter. Ending a show that late, if that's the time zone that you're in. Again, ending a show at 12:30 regardless is fucking stupid. But it makes more sense, like for viewers, if it's ending at 12:30 for East Coast people, and we're not the only people that matter, of course. Like the people in the UK have been suffering for years now with how late, the WWE shows go and AEW shows go, pay-per-views, Raws, what have you. But when you're actually there, that's as if, I guess they do that, but I don't know. Like they'll start shows in the UK. If they started at 8 p.m. and then get done at 12:30, that's also stupid to me. That's also fucking dumb. Like you just can't be getting done that late with these shows for the sake of the people in the building, but also for the sake of your performers. You're doing them a disservice when you end the show that late and people don't give a fuck about your main event because they're just ready for the show to be over. I will never remember anything from that main event aside from the finish. And it was a good main event, but again, it wasn't really overly long, which was probably for the best that late in the show, but you don't have to face that issue if you don't have as many matches on the show that you do, and you don't have every match go fucking 20 minutes. But Samoa Joe winning was a nice twist. I was not expecting that. The same way I was not expecting him to leave as the world champion at World's End a few years ago. That was a bit more obvious. This, to me, came completely out of nowhere. He's still 1/3 of the Trios champions, and he just kind of felt like a filler opponent for Page until MJF came back. MJF did not come back on the show as I expected. Swerve came back instead, and he's a great name to have back in that mix. But we are left with an issue. The people that are currently floating around the world title scene are all the same names that have been in the main event scene now for AEW for the last year or two. Really for the last year and a half. Samoa Joe won the championship 2 years ago. Had a very good run with it for the 4 months that he had it, from December through April. And who did he lose that championship to? Swerve Strickland. And Swerve returned at the end of this show confronting Joe. He might win the belt as soon as World's End, but again, it's the same story they've already told. Joe beat Swerve in a 3-way, so I guess he's never beaten Swerve one-on-one, but Swerve has already beaten Joe one-on-one. They've already told this story. There's nothing intriguing about doing another singles match between those two guys for that championship. If you throw Adam Page into the mix, to make it a 3-way. We've already seen so much of Page and Swerve, and they were standing side by side to close the show on Saturday. So it's not as if they're right back to being opponents. But we've already seen so much of that, and they kind of peaked their storyline with their last hardcore match about a year ago. And then, kind of joining forces, so to speak, back it all in earlier in the year. So to go back to them being opponents for the world title at this point, to me feels like old hat. To at least be doing that at this point in their respective careers so soon after what we've already seen from them in the last 2 years. And then we just saw Page and Joe twice. So there's just nothing about any of that to me that is overly interesting. Maybe something will happen on Dynamite. Again, like I said, I'm recording this before I've seen the show. Maybe something will happen there that will change my mind. Maybe MJF comes back and they make it a 4-way instead. That could work. I mean, MJF cashes in his title shot. I don't know why he would do that in a fucking 4-way, but I mean, I guess maybe he doesn't want to face Joe one-on-one. But again, even MJF and Joe, we've seen a couple times back from 2023. MJF and Paige, we've already seen a few times this year alone. The only feud out of that kind of picture currently that interests me that we haven't seen before is Swerve and MJF. That's what we would need to see more of. That's a feud that I want to see at some point in the near future. MJF should be back soon, and he's going to be a great name to have back in that main event mix. But another thing that they need to be cognizant of and do more of in the future, and WWE is the same way, is to build more names in that main event scene. Give me more new faces in that main event picture. The only person to kind of get a real shot in the main event in the last few months that wasn't a name that we've seen in the scene before, like Moxley we've seen as a main eventer in AEW for years now, Paige, same thing, was Kyle Fletcher. Kyle Fletcher was a new name they put in the main event of All Out back in September, and that match was awesome. I thought that was an excellent match. My only issue with them doing the match was that we knew Fletcher would not win because he was the current TNT champion. He had just won that title right before that. So we knew he was not winning the World Championship. And they can go back to Paige and Fletcher at some point down the road. Maybe Fletcher can finally beat Adam Page or whatever. That'd be a nice story to tell eventually as well. But yeah, man, I don't know. I just kind of feel like they need more new blood towards the top of the card in both companies. But we're talking about AEW here, so I'm just specifically singling them out. Joe, I love. I will never complain about Joe being the world champion. It could be a far worse scenario with Jon Moxley still being the world champion for a 4th fucking time or a 5th fucking time, and us just getting the same matches and stories I don't give a shit about. It was way worse earlier this year. But they still need new names to put in that main event picture that we haven't seen floating around the world title picture in the main event mix for the last few years now. Give me new names. Who those people are, I'm not sure. Even if it's an Okada. Like, Okada's been there for almost 2 years now, has not challenged for that world championship a single time to my knowledge. Have him drop that fucking Continental title and move on up. Mercedes, same thing, but at least Mercedes has challenged for the AEW Women's World Championship twice and failed twice. Okada's been in the same spot now for the last 2 years, and he's done great, but it's time to move beyond the Continental title stuff and take advantage of Okada while he's still, I mean, he's not exactly young. I think he's either almost 40 or is 40 or whatever. He's not as old as Joe or some of the other people in the main event mix in AEW. I think Moxley might be the same age as Okada, actually. But anyway, it's something that we haven't seen before. So that's something that I want to see from AEW as we close out the year and kick off 2026, is some new names in the main event scene, both in AEW and WWE alike. Speaking of WWE, we'll close out here with my Survivor Series predictions coming up for Saturday. Only a 4-match card. They will not be adding a 5th match. I know we're getting a Survivor Series Elimination Tag Team match on Friday's SmackDown. I'm not really upset that it's not on the show itself. It doesn't really feel pay-per-view worthy. It would be nice if it was on the show, but I don't think they would do 2 War Games matches and then also a 10-man Elimination Tag Team match. So I'm fine with it getting some spotlight on SmackDown on Friday, but I would prefer if they just brought back that match to the event itself and not relegated it to SmackDown, instead of always relying on War Games to draw people to be interested in this show. Survivor Series has struggled for years as far as being the least important of the 4 big pay-per-views, and they feel like they need a gimmick, whether it be the Survivor Series elimination matches, which I personally prefer, or War Games, or Raw versus SmackDown, which was a stupid fucking concept from the get-go. Aside from maybe the first year in 2016, beyond that, it was a dumb concept. I still think the build for this show has been okay, and I still think the show could exceed expectations and be very good. But I'm just still not a fan of the over-reliance on the War Games gimmick. And I talked more about it on Tuesday's hashtag AskGSM, so I won't go on the same rant again. I just kind of feel like they could do a better job of making it feel more special and making these matches at least make sense. Justify why these matches are happening in War Games. I could see the case for the last few ones with the Judgment Day and the Bloodline. With this one, Rollins got hurt. You got fucking Cody Rhodes in there randomly. Brock Lesnar at least has the Paul Heyman connection, but he hasn't been in a tag team match in decades. Logan Paul being in there is fucking random. I like the star power in the match, but it doesn't change the fact that doing the match at all is very random. But here's my quick picks for the show. Stephanie Vaquera and Nikki Bella for the Women's World Championship. I could see a scenario where Nikki Bella walks out new champion. I mean, they really rushed into this match. I know they couldn't save the match for Saturday night's main event, just because I think that show is going to obviously be John Cena's last match, but then also a series of NXT exhibition matches. So it doesn't look like this would even be on that show, which is why they rushed to put it on this card. And it could be a fine match. There's really nothing about the feud currently that is overly exciting or interesting, but I think Stephanie could bring Nikki Bella to a good match. I could see a non-finish to keep the feud alive. I don't think this is it. I do think it'll continue past this point. I just don't need to see Nikki Bella as the Women's World Champion. I don't really think there is a need for that. I think they could keep the title on Stephanie for a lot longer, hopefully until WrestleMania. Yeah, they could take the title off of her and then have her win it back from Nikki at some point in the near future. I think that could work. I would just keep the belt on Stephanie. I think Nikki and her role, I've actually not had an issue with the booking of Nikki Bella at all. Yeah, having her lose a bunch of matches and then immediately challenge for the championship is kind of silly without having her win a number one contenders match or win any matches to earn the opportunity. But whatever, it's a match that keeps Stephanie busy, gives her a notable name to beat. If she does win, like I said, I could see Nikki Bella maybe sneaking out the victory. Maybe Brie Bella returns, and that's where Brie Bella comes back and helps Nikki win the title. I'm not sure. We'll find out soon. I do think Stephanie goes over and retains the championship. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. Nikki winning the belt, her first title win in, 10 years? I don't know if I necessarily need to see that, but as long as if Nikki wins it, she doesn't hold it for long, and Stephanie gets the belt back soon after, I'd be okay with it, but I would still prefer a Stephanie win and successful retention of the championship here. John Cena, Dominic Mysterio for the Intercontinental title. Their first match, honestly, from an in-ring standpoint, just in being there myself, was not anything special. And I said this a few weeks ago, I'm actually not a fan of them running it back because it just kind of feels like a waste of one of John Cena's final matches. They already did the match once. They could have had Dominic Mysterio beat him the first time or not do it the first time and have Dominic Mysterio face him here and beat Cena. I don't think Cena needed to win the Intercontinental Championship. If they wanted to do the match on the show, Dominic could have very easily just retained against Cena on the show and had that been it. But they wanted to give the belt to Cena in Boston. Okay, whatever. The match should be okay. Dominic's got to get the belt back. You do not do this match unless Dominic is getting the belt back. There is a chance Cena could win because there have been rumblings for a while now that Cena was expected to walk into his final match at Saturday night's main event as the Intercontinental Champion. I would not do that personally, especially if he's going to face Gunther in his final match. Gunther does not need the Intercontinental Championship. I would not do that. I think that'd be stupid. Dominic should get the title back here. It obviously will not be clean. Will it be with an assist from the rest of the Judgment Day, who he hasn't been on great terms with recently? Or could it be an assist from Liv Morgan, who could be making her return, which would be nice to see. I haven't heard she's due back anytime soon. The last thing I heard was that she could be back around the Royal Rumble time, which would be great. But if she's back on Saturday helping Dominic get the belt back, that would be great too. So I got Dominic getting the belt back on this show. Women's War Games is Rhea Ripley, Io Sky, Alexa Bliss, Charlotte Flair, and AJ Lee, taking on Nia Jax, Lash Legend, the Kabuki Warriors, and Becky Lynch. AJ and Becky joining their respective teams within the last week on WWE TV. I think this could be a good Women's War Games match. My biggest issue with Women's War Games in the last few years is that they've over-relied on the weapons and the garbage and the plunder and all that other sort of shit to the point where the matches just are a bunch of fucking hardcore spots and really no storytelling, and it's a lot of, a lot of botched spots in last year's match, but just a lot of sloppy spots and random shit that doesn't make sense, and it's just, garbage for the sake of garbage. So hopefully not in this match, and we can get, some more storytelling and whatever. I do think it'll be good. The baby faces stood tall on Monday, which makes me think we could have the heels going over here. This is tough. I'm going to say I don't think the heels go over in both matches. So I'll say the babyface team wins here, but the heels win in the main event. So that's my prediction for both matches, I guess. And the men's match is, just to be clear, the Vision, Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed, and I guess Logan Paul, who I guess is an official member of the Vision now. Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar taking on CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, the Usos, and Roman Reigns. I think the heel team really needs to win that match to set up Logan Paul as CM Punk's next challenger for the championship. McIntyre needs to fucking win something. Brock doesn't need to win shit, but I don't know. I just think Breaker and Reed, with all the momentum that they have after taking out Rollins or whatever momentum they have left, really, after they took out Rollins and Reed beat Roman back at Crown Jewel last month, they should win. Cody Rhodes, Punk, the Usos, Roman have nothing to fucking gain from winning this match. Legitimately nothing, especially when you have two of the top world champions involved in the same match. There's just no reason to have them win here. They could win and it would be a nice visual, but we've also had the babyfaces go over in men's war games for the last 2 years. I think the heels could afford a win here to kind of further the story and give them something to kind of feed off of and go after the top 2 titles on Raw and SmackDown and whatever. I feel like that would make sense. So even though storyline-wise, the match itself doesn't make a whole lot of sense with who they have involved and some of the stories they're telling here, I am looking forward to it from a star power standpoint to have so many former world champions in one match, a lot of people that haven't interacted in a long time, like Punk and Lesnar, for example, and all that other sort of stuff. A lot of intertwining stories and feuds and bad blood, chemistry. It should be a spectacle for that alone. And obviously, I'm sure that's going to be an event, close out the show, but I have Team Vision going over, the heels going over there, and the baby faces going over in women's war games, like I mentioned earlier. So that Survivor Series coming up on Saturday. We will have our full thoughts on the show next week here on WrestleRant Radio, by which point I'm hoping to feel better and not sound like complete shit. My voice has improved during the course of this show, so that's a positive, but still not feeling great. Hope to be back to 100% by this time next week. And as they mentioned on Hashtag on Tuesday, we should be live again for Hashtag AskGSM next Tuesday on the YouTube channel, WrestleRant Radio next Thursday on the YouTube channel. So join us there over at youtube.com/WrestleRant. New episodes of the show available every single Thursday on WrestleRant.com, WrestleRantRadio.com, and all major podcast platforms. You can also check out our ProWrestlingTees.com/WrestleRant store. It's this store. It's just ProWrestlingTees.com/WrestleRant for our ongoing Black Friday sale that I'm pretty sure is going on right now. Buy a WrestleRant Radio tee. We also have, we have that, the WrestleRant Halloween shirt, the WrestleRant Christmas shirt. Support the brand of 15 years and snag yourself a shirt today. I would appreciate it. And I think that's about it. If you're watching or listening on YouTube, be sure to like the video and subscribe. Again, I apologize for the poor quality of today's audio just because of my voice and not feeling well, but hopefully that won't be an issue next week. I don't get sick often, but when I do, I get really sick just because I don't get sick often. And the last month has finally caught up to me as far as finally being worn down and just getting sick. So I can't really say I'm overly surprised. But again, like I said earlier as well, check out my interview with Aleister Black. As you heard earlier, the standalone audio of the interview available right now on the YouTube channel from Wednesday, and also the article version available right now on Bleacher Report. All right, guys, I'm going to head on out of here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know this is not the usual live show that we do here for WrestleRant Radio, but hopefully this is a one-time thing. I appreciate you guys bearing with me, and hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving on Thursday, or today, rather, as we put the show up on Thanksgiving as we always do. And if you're not here from the States, have an awesome Thursday. Until next time, guys, I'm Graham Jason Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.
Join Graham GSM Matthews and RJ Marceau every Thursday as they run down their weekly wrestling rants, offer expert analysis, host exclusive interviews, and more. Subscribe today on all your favorite podcast platforms and never miss an episode of WrestleRant Radio.